Next on the news.
Respaldados por ellos.
Let us move forward together.
Pope Francis holding an open-air mass in Canada for 65,000 people as he continues the healing process with the Indigenous people. Also, the abortion debate in Indiana draws protesters from both sides and the vice president. Plus, a win for parents in New York. How much money will be going to boost childcare programs across the state? And it's been his lifelong passion how bowling has kept a 100-year-old man young at heart. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. The Holy Father entering the stadium in Edmonton in what was called a tour among the people. As Pope Francis continues his mission of penance in Canada, he celebrated Mass with the huge crowd on this feast day of Jesus' grandparents, praising the Indigenous tradition of showing respect to their elders. Tens of thousands filled Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium to join Pope Francis in a Mass celebrating the feast of Saints Joachim and Anne. Jesus' grandmother is a widely revered figure among Indigenous Catholics, and on this feast day, the Pope honored all grandparents, saying, "We are children of a history that needs to be preserved."
Somos la descendencia.
Our roots, the love that awaited us and welcomed us into the world, the families in which we grew up, are part of a unique history that preceded us and gave us life.
Tuesday's Mass comes a day after Pope Francis apologized to Canada's Indigenous community for the Church's role in the abuses suffered at residential schools, the reason behind the Holy Father's penitential pilgrimage. He told those in the audience to look to Joachim and Anne as a reminder to honor our elders and treasure their presence in order to create a better future.
¿Qué huella estoy dejando en mi camino?
A future in which the history of violence and marginalization suffered by our Indigenous brothers and sisters is never repeated. That future is possible if, with God's help, we do not sever the bond that joins us with those who have gone before us, and if we foster dialogue with those who will come after us.
To talk more about the Holy Father's journey, we're joined by John Allen, editor of Crux. Hi, John.
Hey, Christine.
So, John, during the Mass, Pope Francis was reflecting on Jesus' grandparents on this feast day, saying, "We're all children with a history that should be preserved." So, considering the reason for his visit to Canada, how do you think his message was received?
This is one of those cases where context is king. Because, of course, he is in Canada to apologize for abuse that took place at church-run residential schools, part of a broader effort to sort of eradicate Indigenous cultures. And here he was talking about the importance of preserving memory and how our elders are the guarantors of that memory and how they should be cherished, not ignored, not abandoned. I think in that context, this message has particular resonance and I imagine will have been quite well received by the Pope's audience today.
Why is St. Anne so important among Indigenous Catholics?
Well, St. Anne is the grandmother of Jesus, right? And the grandmother has an extraordinarily important role in Indigenous cultures. She is the one who, in a sense, hands on the culture of the family, but also the broader culture. And she's like the historical memory, right, of the family. And so there's always been a strong devotion to St. Anne among Indigenous Catholic populations.
Okay, now during Francis's visit to Sacred Heart Church yesterday, the first officially designated Indigenous parish in Canada, he talked about how people can be Indigenous and Catholic. And this church really signifies that, doesn't it? It kind of merges the Indigenous language and customs in the liturgy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they certainly bring in the languages and some Indigenous rituals and so forth into liturgical celebrations. And I think it's bigger than that, Christine. I mean, this is what, theologians would talk about as inculturation. That is that the gospel takes root in the various cultures of the earth. And as Pope Benedict would say, it purifies those cultures. That is, it celebrates what's best, it counteracts the toxins in those cultures, and ultimately lifts them up to God, right? That's the idea. And I think Pope Francis, his presence this week in Canada is very much intended in part to put an exclamation point on that idea that the effort of Christianity, despite the sorrowful history we now know so much about, really the effort of Christianity is not to eradicate or snuff out these cultures. It's to celebrate them, to elevate them, ultimately to purify them and preserve them. And I think this week is form reinforcing function. We hear that verbally from the Pope, but we also see it in the celebrations and the other events on his itinerary.
All right, John Allen, editor at Crux. We'll check back in with you again this week.
Thanks, Christine.
If you're watching us Tuesday at 7 p.m. and you want to watch the Pope's Mass in full, then you're in luck. Net TV will be airing the Mass right after Currents News. Again, that's the Pope's Mass in Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium following Currents News at 7:30 p.m. Be sure to stick with Currents News and the tablet for continuing coverage of the Pope's trip in Canada. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's potential travel plans to Taiwan sparking a debate with China. Even President Joe Biden is weighing in on Pelosi's itinerary, warning it could be dangerous for both her and Taiwan.
I think what the president was saying is maybe the military was afraid our plane would get shot down or something like that by the Chinese. I don't know exactly. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. You're telling me, and I've heard it anecdotally.
Tuesday, China's Ministry of National Defense urged Pelosi to cancel her visit to Taipei. And just last week, China's foreign ministry warned it would take resolute and forceful measures should Pelosi continue with her trip. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has made his first appearance in Washington since leaving office last year. The former president returned to the nation's capital Tuesday to deliver the keynote address at a summit held by the America First Policy Institute, a think tank established by some of his former White House advisors. The summit comes less than a week after the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th insurrection held its second primetime hearing. There's trouble on the green at the former president's golf club in New Jersey. Family members of those killed in the September 11th terror attacks held a press conference protesting a golf tournament that has ties to Saudi Arabia.
By joining LIV, players have shamelessly partnered with the very country that U.S. intelligence reports prove had numerous connections to the attacks on September 11th.
Calling on golfers to take a stand, the national chair for 9/11 Families United decried the LIV Golf Invitational, which has been under scrutiny for its ties to Saudi Arabia. Despite their calls for cancellation, the tournament is expected to kick off Friday. Thousands gathered at the Indiana State House Monday, surrounding the building and filling the corridors as state lawmakers convened for a special session to debate abortion. The debate centers around a proposed bill that aims to ban abortion at any stage of pregnancy, with some exceptions for rape, incest, and if the mother's life is in jeopardy. While the bill is likely to pass, it's facing fierce opposition on both sides of the issues.
Indiana Right to Life's mission is to protect the right to life. Our opposition to this bill is because in its current state, it doesn't stack up to that mission.
Indiana is the first state to call a special session to attempt to pass new laws restricting abortion in the wake of the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. At least 280 people have signed up to testify about the proposed bill. New details about what happened inside the Supreme Court just ahead of the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, and how Chief Justice John Roberts almost saved the original ruling that legalized abortion. Roberts reportedly lobbied fellow conservatives, including Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, to switch their vote. But the draft opinion that leaked back in May got in the way of those efforts, worsening the existing strains among the justices. There's growing concerns about the spread of monkeypox here in the United States and around the world. Here in the U.S., health officials are warning that the number of cases is likely to go up. Reed Binion has the story.
We should absolutely be concerned, 100% concerned.
Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra laying bare the urgency of confronting the growing threat of monkeypox, as two sources familiar with internal discussions say the White House is working on naming a monkeypox coordinator amid rising case numbers. Becerra's words come after the World Health Organization declared the global outbreak a public health emergency of international concern over the weekend. The U.S. hasn't yet declared it a public health emergency.
We're seeing a very unusual event. We've known monkeypox since the 1970s, but we haven't seen this level of transmission around the world.
About 2 months after the first monkeypox infection in the U.S. was confirmed, the nation's total cases have risen to about 2,900. 2 of those infections were in children, and the White House says the total number of cases is likely to go up.
Would not be surprised if we see an increase in cases as testing becomes more robust.
The federal government had shipped 300,000 monkeypox vaccines to states and territories as of Friday. The White House says the FDA is working to finalize approval for roughly 800,000 more doses. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
There are now more than 1,000 confirmed cases of monkeypox in New York City. That's according to new numbers released by city health officials. The U.S. has a total of just over 3,800 cases. New Yorkers scrambled to get a limited supply of monkeypox vaccines at the end of June. So what are the most common symptoms of monkeypox? Well, they usually start appearing within 2 weeks of exposure and most commonly include a rash or sores that look like pimples or blisters. Those rashes or sores can appear either all over the body or on certain parts such as hands, feet, or face. They're also itchy and painful. People have also been known to experience flu-like symptoms, including fever, swollen lymph nodes, headache, or tiredness. If you or someone near you contracts monkeypox, here's what you should do. Stay home and separate from other people. If that's not possible, wear a mask and avoid physical contact. You should also wear clothes that will cover any lesions you may have. Don't share or let others touch your clothing, towels, bedding, or utensils, and don't share food or drinks. Finally, make sure you and the other members of your household are washing their hands and washing your shared spaces often. To see if you can get the monkeypox vaccine, just go to vax4nyc.nyc.gov/patient/s/monkeypox. I'm going to give you that one more time. vax4nyc.nyc.gov/patient/s/monkeypox to try to get an appointment. Coming up on Currents News, continuing coverage of the Pope's penitential pilgrimage in Canada. Next, a closer look at the Holy Father's visit to the only designated Indigenous church in Canada and how he plans to honor the Indigenous people for the rest of the trip. Plus, parents in New York, relief is on the way. A statewide move is coming that will help thousands of families in need. And pump prices could soon be going down. Why experts believe you could soon see under $4 a gallon at your local station. More now on the Pope's trip to Canada. Following his apology Monday morning, the Holy Father appeared before an audience at the Sacred Heart Church of the First Peoples in Edmonton. That's where 2 parishioners explain the journey of the Indigenous people in overcoming the horrors of the residential schools.
Your presence today gives us the opportunity to confront, to understand, to release, and to transcend our trauma.
Sitting before about 250 people in pews, Pope Francis expressed admiration for the many survivors of residential schools who did not lose their faith, saying one can proudly be both Indigenous and Catholic. The Holy Father also touched on the theme of reconciliation and emphasized the importance of diversity in the church.
Esta es una casa para todos, abierta e inclusiva. Tal como debe ser la Iglesia, familia de los hijos de Dios, donde la hospitalidad y la acogida, valores típicos de la cultura indígena, son esenciales.
Sacred Heart Church of the First Peoples is the only designated Indigenous church in Canada and has been around since 1906. After suffering a devastating fire in 2020, the church building was rebuilt to better reflect Indigenous cultures. It now incorporates teepee poles above the altar, as well as traditional Métis art portraying the Stations of the Cross. The church also has on display a statue of Saint Kateri Takaquita, which Pope Francis blessed at the end of his meeting. Saint Kateri was the first Indigenous woman from North America to be canonized, and she was recognized for her devotion to Christ and her commitment to charity. That's a sanctity the Sacred Heart Parish strives for with their outreach ministries and daily community meal program. Pope Francis's schedule is filled with important events that focus on Indigenous people. Tomorrow on Wednesday, the Holy Father will meet with government officials as well as Indigenous leaders at the Citadel of Quebec. While those meetings are private, there will be programs of Indigenous cultural expression for the public at the Plains of Abraham. That historical site was the scene to a key battle in the French and Indian War. Pope Francis will also speak at a Mass on Thursday at the National Shrine of Saint Anne de Beaupré, a renowned pilgrimage destination that merges Catholicism and Indigenous culture. Later, there will be Vespers at the First Church in Quebec City, the Cathedral of Notre Dame. Both of those spiritual events will be rebroadcast on Net TV. The Mass at the National Shrine will air at 1 p.m. and the Vespers will air at 8:30 p.m. On his final day in Canada, the Pope will hold private meetings at the residence of the Archbishop of Quebec, including with a delegation of Indigenous people from Eastern Canada. He'll then fly to Iqaluit, where he will meet with residential school survivors before attending a public community event hosted by Inuit leaders outside a local elementary school. Be sure to stay with Currents News and the tablet for continuing coverage of the papal trip to Canada and the Pope's efforts to connect with the Indigenous people. Help is on the way for parents in New York. Governor Kathy Hochul on Monday announced a $70 million child care grant. The federal funds will be allocated to help nearly 350 new child care programs, and more than 12,000 new slots will be created for families in need across the state. According to a report from the state Senate, 64% of New Yorkers live in a child care desert, where there are either no providers or not enough to meet families' needs. Nassau police have released new surveillance pictures of a vehicle in connection with hate flyers found in several Long Island communities. Detectives say a person in this white Toyota may be behind the anti-Semitic flyers found in Oceanside and Rockville Center. On Monday, residents in several neighborhoods told police they found the flyers inside plastic bags on their front lawns. In New York and across the U.S., we are seeing some relief at the pump. Gas prices have been trending downward for the 6th week in a row. According to GasBuddy.com, the current national average for a gallon of gas is about $4.30. That's down about 70 cents compared to June, when gas prices peaked at just over $5. New York City also seeing a drop in gas prices. New Yorkers can now find a gallon of gas for roughly $4.55. While we're still far from pre-pandemic gas prices, experts believe the national average will soon drop below $4 across the country. Already, the average price for a gallon of unleaded is less than $4 in 11 states, most of which are in the South. According to AAA, the steady decline is due to a lowered demand for gas coupled with continuous losses in the oil market. While gas issues are easing in the U.S., Europe is struggling. This after Russia's state-run gas company announced it will cut deliveries of natural gas to Germany. According to a Kremlin spokesperson, the proposed limit is the result of maintenance issues and Western sanctions. But the European Union has accused Russia of resorting to energy blackmail. Amid Russia's decision, EU energy ministers have reached an agreement to reduce the demand for gas. The officials were meeting in Brussels on Tuesday to discuss energy supply now that Russia is trimming the flow of fuel. The European Union wants to reduce gas usage among its countries by 15% through next spring. Russia says it will withdraw from the International Space Station project in 2024 after it fulfills its obligations. The announcement comes as Russia's war in Ukraine has strained its relationship with the U.S. and Europe. The Kremlin says after withdrawing from the ISS, Russia will build its own space station. Russia's withdrawal would be a major blow for the ISS, which has been a model of international cooperation for decades. Still to come on Currents News, proof you're never too old for your passion in life. This 100-year-old bowler celebrated his milestone birthday with his favorite lifelong hobby. And if you're watching Currents at 7 p.m., Net TV will be rebroadcasting the Pope's Mass at the Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton after tonight's newscast. We'll give you one last sneak preview before the prayers begin. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Great to find a nice hobby that you love. An Iowa man found his 90 years ago, and he's still rolling strong. Scott Sayville has more on the man whose passion is bowling.
Harry Burkus of Cedar Rapids celebrated his 100th birthday recently with strike after strike after strike.
If you hear me talking to my ball, if it doesn't do good, why, try to encourage the ball to do better.
Harry has been bowling for 90 years. He started when he was just 10 years old.
There is a warmth with bowling that you don't find in other sports, like you do here. This is my home away from home, basically.
Burkus isn't kidding. He says May City Bowl is his home away from home. He bowls in a summer league, and then it really gets busy.
We get into the fall and winter months, then it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm here every day.
The day I shot Harry, he was on fire with 3 strikes in a row and 4 in the game on his way to a 154.
But I've never been what you'd call a high-scoring bowler. I do it for the exercise, for the people. It's become part of me.
And Harry is a true inspiration to all his bowling partners in the senior league.
I told him, if I live to be that long, I'm in the shape he's in, I'll be great.
As if he can do it at 100, I sure can be able to do it at my age.
So how do you live to be 100, Harry?
I've never drank alcohol. I've never smoked. I've tried them all, yes, but I mean, one time was enough for all of it.
Burkus is still competitive on the lanes, and he's not about to give it up anytime soon.
As long as I'm able to stand up and throw the ball, if nothing else, I'll be like the little kids get up there and just throw it that way. As long as I can get the ball down and at least hit the pins. I want to bowl right up to the time that the Undertaker comes for me.
That was Scott Sayville reporting, and we wish Harry lots of luck the next time he heads out to the bowling alley, but he may not need that. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. If you're watching us at 7 p.m., be sure to stay right there. Coming up right after this newscast, the Pope's full Mass at Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium. But first, some highlights from the Holy Father's prayers with the Indigenous people.
The Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Go in peace.